My name is Grace Williams. I'm 67 years old from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm about to tell you how my late husband Robert's children thought they could contest his will to cut me out of the $1.8 million estate he left. Me, not knowing they'd picked the wrong stepmother to mess with. You see, I'd spent 26 years as a trust administrator at Whitney Bank, specializing in estate management and probate disputes that taught me exactly how inheritance battles work and how to win them. It started 3 months after Robert passed from pancreatic cancer. We'd been married for 18 years, and during his final months, I'd cared for him with the devotion of a woman who'd loved her husband completely. Robert's 3 children from his first marriage, David, Patricia, and Michael, had barely visited during his illness, but they sure showed up fast when the will was read. Robert had been crystal clear about his wishes. He left his entire estate to me, with the understanding that I'd provide for his children after my death. The will was ironclad, drafted by the best estate attorney in New Orleans, witnessed properly, and filed with the court exactly as Robert intended. But apparently, that wasn't good enough for David, Patricia, and Michael. They wanted their money now, and they were willing to destroy me to get it. The first sign of trouble came when David called me 2 weeks after the funeral. "Grace, we need to talk about Daddy's will. We've been consulting with attorneys, and we think there might be some irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" I asked, though I knew exactly where this was heading. "Well, Daddy was pretty sick toward the end, maybe not thinking clearly, and you were the one taking care of him and had access to all his papers. I'm sure you understand our concerns." I understood perfectly. Robert's children were going to claim I'd manipulated their dying father into leaving everything to me. It was the oldest trick in the probate book: attack the surviving spouse's character and hope the court would overturn a valid will. "David, your father was of sound mind when he made his will. He made his choices based on 18 years of marriage to me and 40 years of watching how his children treated him." That's exactly the kind of comment that makes us question your motives. Grace, a loving stepmother wouldn't turn us against our own father's memory, but I wasn't just a loving stepmother. I was Grace Williams, who'd spent 26 years at Whitney Bank learning exactly how estate contests worked, how much they cost, and how to destroy challengers who thought they could steal what didn't belong to them. That evening, I sat in the uptown mansion Robert had left me, looking at 40 years of family photos, and I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. Robert's children thought they were dealing with a grieving widow who'd fold under legal pressure. Instead, they'd declared war on someone who'd spent her career watching families tear each other apart over money and learning exactly how to win those battles. The war for Robert's estate had begun, but only I knew the rules of the game we were about to play. Before I tell you how I buried Robert's children in legal fees, you need to understand what they were trying to steal from me and the lifetime of devotion that estate represented. Every dollar Robert left me was earned through our partnership, our love, and 18 years of building a life together that his children had watched with increasing resentment. I met Robert Williams in 1995 when I was 49 years old, working as a senior trust administrator at Whitney Bank in New Orleans. He was 58, a successful commercial real estate developer who'd been divorced for 8 years after his first wife left him for a younger man. His 3 children, David, Patricia, and Michael, were adults with their own families, but they still expected their father to fund their lifestyles indefinitely. Robert was different from any man I'd ever known. Where other men talked about what they wanted, Robert talked about what he could give. Our first date was dinner at Commander's Palace, and instead of trying to impress me with expensive wine, he spent the evening asking about my work, my dreams and my plans for the future. "Grace, I've made my money and raised my children," he told me that first night. "Now I want to find someone to share the rest of my life with. someone who values partnership over inheritance. When we married in 1997, I brought $150,000 in savings from my banking career. Robert brought $800,000 in real estate holdings, business investments, and liquid assets. But more importantly, we both brought the wisdom to build something together instead of just combining what we already had. Over 18 years, we grew Robert's portfolio to $1.8 million through careful investment, strategic property development, and the kind of financial partnership that only comes from genuine trust and shared goals. I used my banking expertise to manage our investment accounts, while Robert used his development experience to identify profitable real estate opportunities. We bought and renovated 3 properties in the Garden District, turning rundown houses into beautiful rental properties that generated $4,200 monthly income. We invested in municipal bonds, diversified stock portfolios, and money market accounts that grew steadily through 2 decades of careful management. But the real investment was in our marriage. Every Sunday, Robert and I would spend the morning at St. Augustine Catholic Church, then the afternoon planning our financial future over coffee at Café du Monde. We talked about retirement, travel, and legacy, always including his children in our long-term plans. When I'm gone, Grace, everything goes to you first, Robert told me during one of those Sunday planning sessions. You've earned it through 18 years of partnership, but I know you'll take care of David, Patricia, and Michael when the time comes. That's the kind of woman you are. Robert's children, however, saw our success differently. They watched their father's wealth grow during our marriage and assumed I was somehow stealing their inheritance. They'd visit twice a year, Christmas and Robert's birthday, always asking subtle questions about his estate planning and whether he'd updated his will recently. Daddy, at your age, you should consider what's best for the family, Patricia would say during holiday dinners. Grace is wonderful, but blood is blood. Your children should be your primary concern. My wife is my primary concern, Robert would reply firmly. My children are grown adults who need to build their own lives instead of waiting for mine to end. The tension grew worse after Robert's cancer diagnosis in 2012. During his 18 months of treatment, I was the one driving him to chemotherapy, managing his medications, and sitting beside his bed through the difficult nights. His children visited maybe once a month, usually staying less than an hour before finding reasons to leave. Grace, this is really hard for us, David explained during one brief visit. Seeing Daddy like this, it's just too emotional. We know you understand. I understood perfectly. They couldn't handle watching their father suffer, but they expected to inherit the wealth he was building with my partnership and care. When Robert passed in September 2013, I'd spent $47,000 of our joint savings on experimental treatments, private nurses, and medical equipment to keep him comfortable at home. His children contributed nothing to his care except occasional flowers and empty promises to visit more often. At Robert's funeral, they played the role of grieving children perfectly, accepting condolences and speaking about their beloved father with tears in their eyes. But I knew what they were really thinking about: the will reading scheduled for the following week. Robert had left everything to me because I'd earned it through 18 years of partnership, love, and dedication. His children wanted to contest that will because they'd spent 40 years expecting inheritance without investment. That was their choice. Now they were about to learn what happened when you tried to steal from someone who'd spent 26 years learning exactly how estate battles are won and lost. What I discovered next revealed that David, Patricia, and Michael's will contest wasn't a recent decision based on grief and confusion. It was a calculated legal strategy they'd been planning since Robert's cancer diagnosis, using my devotion to his care as evidence of my supposed manipulation. 2 weeks after David's threatening phone call, I did what any experienced trust administrator would do when facing probate litigation. I activated the professional network I'd built during 26 years at Whitney Bank. If Robert's children were planning to contest his will, there would be a paper trail, and I was going to find it before they could use it against me. My first call was to Margaret Thibodeau, my former colleague who'd moved from banking to private investigation, specializing in family financial disputes. "Margaret, I need a complete background check on Robert's children and any recent legal consultations they've had." "Grace, honey, do you think they're planning something?" "I know they're planning something. I just need to know how sophisticated their plan is before they execute it." Within 48 hours, Margaret had uncovered evidence that confirmed my worst suspicions and gave me the ammunition I needed to destroy their case before it reached court. "Grace, those children of Robert's have been meeting with probate attorney Charles Melancon for 6 months," Margaret reported during our meeting at her Magazine Street office. "They started consulting him right after Robert's diagnosis, asking about grounds for will contests and undue influence claims." Margaret showed me printed emails between Robert's children discussing their inheritance timeline and strategies for challenging my financial manipulation of their father. David had been researching probate law, Patricia had been documenting my involvement in Robert's medical care, and Michael had been calculating the estate value. "They've been planning this contest since before Robert died," Margaret continued. "They hired Melancon specifically because he specializes in attacking surviving spouses and second marriages." But the most shocking discovery was what Margaret found in their financial records. All 3 of Robert's children were drowning in debt and had been counting on immediate inheritance to solve their money problems. David owes $85,000 in credit card debt and business loans. Patricia is behind on her mortgage and facing foreclosure. Michael's been borrowing against his life insurance to pay basic expenses, Margaret explained. "They're not just greedy, they're desperate." That afternoon, I called Robert's estate attorney, James Boudreau, to discuss legal strategy. James had drafted Robert's will and knew exactly how ironclad the document was. But he also understood the emotional and financial toll of probate litigation. "Grace, even frivolous will contests can cost $200,000 in legal fees," James warned. "Melancon is going to drag this out as long as possible, hoping you'll settle rather than spend your inheritance fighting them." "James, I spent 26 years watching families destroy each other in probate court. I know exactly how expensive these battles are. But I also know something Robert's children don't know." "What's that?" "Robert left me more than just the estate they're trying to contest. He left me the resources to fight them until they have nothing left to lose." That evening, I opened the safe deposit box Robert and I had maintained jointly at Whitney Bank, a box his children knew nothing about. Inside were the documents that would make their will contest the most expensive mistake of their lives. Robert had been preparing for exactly this situation for 5 years. In addition to his main estate, he'd accumulated $650,000 in offshore accounts, precious metals investments, and cryptocurrency holdings that weren't listed in his probate will. Money he'd specifically set aside to fund my legal defense if his children tried to steal from me. "If my children contest your inheritance, use this money to bury them in legal fees," Robert had written in a letter dated just 6 months before his death. "Make them understand that trying to steal from you costs more than they could ever win." The will contest papers were filed exactly 1 week later. Charles Melancon claimed that I'd exerted undue influence over Robert during his illness, isolated him from his children, and manipulated him into changing his estate plans to benefit myself. Reading those legal papers in James Boudreau's office, I felt the same calm satisfaction I'd experienced during my banking career when catching embezzlers who thought they were too clever to get caught. "James, how much do you estimate this contest will cost to defend properly? If we fight it aggressively with expert witnesses, forensic accountants, and medical testimony, probably $400,000 to $500,000. Perfect. Use Robert's hidden accounts to fund everything. I want you to hire the most expensive experts money can buy, fight every single motion, and make this the most costly will contest in Louisiana history. Robert's children thought they were dealing with a grieving widow who'd fold under financial pressure. Instead, they declared war on someone who had unlimited resources and 26 years of experience watching families destroy themselves in probate court. The battle was about to begin, and only one side had enough money to win it. The next morning, I did something that would have made Robert proud and his children terrified. I turned his secret financial planning into the most devastating legal weapon in Louisiana probate history. The offshore accounts, precious metals, and cryptocurrency holdings Robert had accumulated weren't just investments. They were a war chest specifically designed to destroy anyone who tried to steal from me. James Boudreau had never seen anything like Robert's hidden financial strategy. Grace, your husband was planning for this will contest 5 years before it happened. These accounts are completely separate from his probate estate, legally yours through joint ownership, and worth more than enough to fund a decade of litigation. Robert knew his children better than they knew themselves, I replied. He predicted they'd try to steal from me the moment he died, so he made sure I had the resources to destroy them financially. We started by hiring the most expensive legal team in New Orleans. James brought in 2 senior partners from his firm, plus a forensic accountant, a medical expert, and a probate specialist who'd never lost a will contest case. Our legal fees alone were running $25,000 per week, money that came directly from Robert's hidden accounts. But hiring expensive lawyers was just the beginning of my strategy. I wanted David, Patricia, and Michael to understand that every day they continued this contest would cost them more than they could ever hope to win. James, I want you to fight every single motion they file, depose every witness they name, and challenge every piece of evidence they present. Make Charles Melancon work for every dollar they're paying him. Grace, that's going to be incredibly expensive. Even for us. Good. Robert left me $650,000 specifically to make this contest as expensive as possible. I want his children to spend every penny they have, mortgage their homes, and destroy their credit fighting a case they can't win. The legal warfare began immediately. When Melancon filed a motion for expedited discovery, we filed a counter motion challenging his standing to represent all 3 children simultaneously. When they demanded access to Robert's medical records, we demanded access to their financial records to prove their desperate need for inheritance money. Every motion cost them $5,000 in legal fees. Every deposition cost $3,000. Every expert witness consultation cost $2,500. Within 3 months, they'd spent $75,000 fighting a contest that had 0 chance of success. Margaret Thibodeau provided regular updates on their financial destruction. Grace, David took out a second mortgage on his house to pay Melancon's retainer. Patricia borrowed $20,000 from her retirement account. Michael is selling his car to cover legal expenses. But the most satisfying part of my strategy was the forensic evidence we developed to prove Robert's mental competency. Our medical expert reviewed 2 years of Robert's healthcare records and found 0 evidence of cognitive decline or mental manipulation. Mr. Williams was mentally sharp until the day he died. Dr. Elizabeth Comeau testified during her deposition. His medical records show clear decision-making, consistent financial planning, and rational estate management throughout his illness. Our forensic accountant traced every financial decision Robert made during our marriage, proving that our investment strategy was collaborative and that Robert actively participated in all major financial decisions until his death. There is no evidence of financial manipulation or undue influence, certified public accountant David Chen testified. Mr. Williams' estate planning was rational, consistent, and aligned with his expressed wishes over 18 years of marriage. 6 months into the contest, Charles Melancon requested a settlement conference, the first sign that Robert's children were beginning to understand how badly they'd miscalculated. Mrs. Williams, my clients are prepared to accept $200,000 each in exchange for dropping the will contest, Melancon proposed during the mediation session. Mr. Melancon, your clients will receive exactly what Robert left them in his will. Nothing, I replied calmly. But I appreciate them offering to pay me $600,000 to drop a case I'm already winning. The look on David, Patricia, and Michael's faces was everything I'd hoped it would be. They'd expected me to negotiate, to offer them money to go away quietly. Instead, they were facing a woman who had unlimited resources and absolute determination to destroy them completely. This contest is costing your clients approximately $15,000 per month in legal fees, James added. Mrs. Williams's defense costs are fully funded by assets your father specifically set aside for this purpose. She can afford to fight this case for decades. Can your clients? The settlement conference ended with no agreement. Robert's children returned to their lawyers, and I returned to my strategy of making every day of this contest cost them more than they could afford. By month 8, they'd spent $180,000 in legal fees fighting for an inheritance they were never going to receive. Their credit was destroyed, their homes were mortgaged, and their marriages were strained by the financial pressure of funding a hopeless legal battle. But I wasn't finished with them yet. The best part of my revenge was still coming, the moment when they'd realized that Robert had been planning their destruction for years, and I'd been the perfect executor of his final wishes. The final destruction of Robert's children unfolded exactly as he'd planned it 5 years earlier, with surgical precision that left them financially devastated and emotionally destroyed. By the time I finished with them, they'd lost not just the inheritance they'd tried to steal, but everything they'd owned before the contest began. The breaking point came in month 10, when Charles Melancon filed a motion to withdraw as their attorney. David, Patricia, and Michael had stopped paying their legal bills, and Melancon wasn't willing to work for free on a case he knew they couldn't win. Your Honor, my clients have exhausted their financial resources and can no longer afford legal representation, Melancon explained to Judge Patricia Comeau during the withdrawal hearing. I respectfully request permission to withdraw from this case. Mr. Melancon, are your clients prepared to proceed pro se, or are they dismissing their will contest? Judge Comeau asked. David stood up in the courtroom, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 10 months. Your Honor, we need time to secure new representation. Mr. Williams, this case has been pending for 10 months. How much more time do you need? We're working on it, Your Honor, but they weren't. Working on anything except trying to find lawyers who'd take their case on contingency, something no experienced probate attorney would do for a contest, with 0 chance of success. James Boudreau seized the opportunity to end the case permanently. Your Honor, we move for summary judgment. After 10 months of discovery, plaintiffs have produced no evidence of undue influence, mental incapacity, or fraud. This contest has been frivolous from the beginning. Judge Comeau agreed. 2 weeks later, she issued a complete summary judgment in my favor, plus an award of $120,000 in attorney's fees to be paid by Robert's children as sanctions for bringing a frivolous lawsuit. The financial destruction was complete. David lost his house to foreclosure, owing $95,000 more than it was worth after taking out the second mortgage to fund the contest. Patricia filed for bankruptcy, listing $240,000 in legal debts and credit card charges related to the lawsuit. Michael moved in with his ex-wife, having sold everything he owned to pay lawyers. But the community response was what made the victory truly satisfying. Word spread quickly through New Orleans society that Robert Williams' children had spent $320,000 trying to steal from the stepmother, who'd cared for their father with unwavering devotion. "Those children should be ashamed of themselves," Sister Margaret told me after Sunday Mass at St. Augustine. Trying to steal from the woman who nursed their father through cancer while they were nowhere to be found. The Times-Picayune ran a feature story about the case. Under the headline, "Children's Greed Backfires in Costly Will. Contest," the article detailed how Robert's children had spent their inheritance before they'd inherited it, fighting a legal battle they couldn't afford against a stepmother who'd been specifically prepared for their attack. 6 months after the judgment, I received 3 separate letters from David, Patricia, and Michael, desperate pleas for financial assistance from the woman they'd tried to destroy. "Grace, I know things got out of hand with the will contest, but we're family," David wrote. "I'm facing bankruptcy, and I was hoping you might consider helping us get back on our feet." I responded to all 3 letters with the same message. Robert left specific instructions about what his children should receive from his estate. "You received exactly what he intended, the consequences of your choices. Today, I'm 70 years old, living comfortably in the Garden District mansion Robert and I built together, with an estate worth $2.1 million after legal expenses and continued investments. The hidden accounts Robert created to fund my defense have grown through careful management, ensuring my financial security for life. I used part of the money to establish the Robert Williams Memorial Fund for cancer care, providing support for families facing the financial burden of terminal illness. Every year, the fund helps 20 families avoid the medical debt that destroys so many people facing cancer. The fund's first recipients were 3 families whose breadwinners had died of cancer, leaving widows to face both grief and financial hardship. Each family received $15,000 exactly. The amount Robert's children had demanded a settlement before their greed destroyed their lives. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty about using Robert's hidden fortune to financially ruin his children. But I sleep peacefully every night, knowing I honored my husband's final wishes and taught his children the most important lesson of their lives. Inheritance must be earned through love and devotion, not demanded through lawsuits and greed. Robert's children thought they could contest his will and intimidate me into sharing wealth I'd helped build through 18 years of partnership. Instead, they learned that some widows spent their careers learning exactly how to win probate battles, and some husbands planned their revenge from beyond the grave. The last thing I want to say is this: protect your estate. Trust your instincts, and never assume that family members won't betray you for money. When ungrateful heirs try to steal what they didn't earn, the only response is to make them understand that greed costs more than generosity ever could. Because when family members choose lawsuits over love, justice isn't personal, it's exactly what they deserve. Thank you for listening to today's story from Granny Story Corner. Life teaches us lessons in the most unexpected ways, doesn't it? If this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more real-life tales that remind us of our shared humanity. Until next time, may your own story be filled with wisdom and love.